My name is Lily, and I've had hidradenitis suppurativa, HS, for years. I finally found some relief since taking Cosentyx. Relief means I can show up more.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some are fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your dermatologist about Cosentyx.
The First Lady of New York Radio, Joan Hamburg, entertaining and informative. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Julia Haart has become a very familiar name. She's CEO, co-owner, chief creative officer of Elite World Group, which is a talent media agency, and I'm going to let Julia fill you in with all that. She was the creative director of the Italian luxury brand La Perla, and she started her career a little later than a lot of young women with her shoe collection. And many of us watched Julia on the Netflix doc, My Unorthodox Life. Her book, Brazen, is being talked about everywhere, and she's really a fascinating woman. So you've come a long way from when you first introduced us to your life, Julia. And now that your book is out, you've done all kinds of things. How do you feel about you? Do you feel that you've really found you and you're in a good place now?
Thank you, first of all, for such a lovely introduction. I'd like to come on this show every day.
Good. Come on and visit.
That was very kind of you. You know, I always consider myself a work in progress. And I think, you know, I'm just getting started. I've just been working for the last 9 years. So I've got big plans and, you know, I have a mission in my head. And until I accomplish that mission, I'm not patting myself on the back or, you know, looking at what I've accomplished because I still have a very long road ahead to go.
But, you know, I read your book and we've watched you. You've done a lot of media and your story, how you were 42 years old, everything changed in your life. You were really self-made. You did this by sheer will.
Exactly. Yes, that's pretty much it. I had no education. I didn't know anyone. You know, I had no background. I didn't know anything about fashion or PR or marketing. And I think, in a way, my lack of understanding of how crazy what I was doing was helped me because, in my mind, I had just time traveled several hundred years and still survived that. So at that point, I said, okay, well, if I can time travel, I can start a shoe brand. I can go for my dreams. And so I just did.
But Julia, when you decided that you were going to go get another life, you still had a foot in each world. You have your children. You were still married. And was your husband really aware that this was happening? And he actually was unusual too, because even though it was an arranged marriage, it was from the same community, he went to the Wharton School. That was almost unheard of in your community.
Well, he's a Baal Tshuva, meaning he grew up irreligious as well. So he went to Wharton because he grew up not religious. He became religious by the same group of people that made my parents religious by the Lubavitch. My parents were made religious by the Lubavitch in Austin, Texas. He was made religious by the Lubavitch at Wharton School of Business. So it's actually the same sect that, made my family more religious, made him more religious as well. So that's why he went to Wharton School. But I do agree with you that he's an extremely unusual person. And this is something many people don't know. Since the show has aired, he has left the community.
Were you shocked by that?
I was blown away. I could not believe it, to tell you the truth, because, I mean, you know, I left 9 years ago and he stayed. And although, you know, as you see from the show, and it's even more so in real life, we're really good friends. He has been a tremendous support to me. I never blamed him for what happened, you know, in our marriage, because he was as much a victim as I was.
Right.
But now, you know, he left the community. He married a woman who has a college degree, does not cover her hair. He is still religious, but he's completely modern Orthodox. He's not fundamentalist at all. He's got televisions in his home, and he took off his black hat. And when people gave him grief for coming on the show and supporting me, he defended me and said, "This is my family. Even if we're not married, she is still a dear friend of mine, and I'm going to support her." So he truly is a very unusual and extraordinary man, and I am very grateful that that has been my experience, because most people who leave my world lose their children. And
right. Well, that's...
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, I'm talking to Julia Haart, star of the Netflix reality series My Unorthodox Life, and a new book called Brazen. So with you leaving, with your husband leaving the ultra-Orthodox, more than that, what happened to those children who were brought up from birth in this community?
So my daughter, Batseva, my eldest, she is currently going through a divorce, and she has a fantastic career. She is a influencer on, you know, Instagram and TikTok. Mm-hmm. She has done co-branding and designed for a bunch of brands. She just did a co-branding with a jewelry company. My daughter Miriam is about to graduate Stanford University.
Wow.
Yeah, she's in her last semester at Stanford. And in fact, she is the youngest person in Stanford history to give a class, because when she was a freshman, she gave a class in augmented reality. And this is a girl who didn't own a computer before she was 13 years old. Wow. So that's Miriam at Stanford. And my son Shlomo just graduated Columbia and is applying to law school. And my youngest, Aaron, is the only one still straddling both worlds. He is actually more religious than my husband.
Oh, and where does he live?
So we co-parent. So he spends half the week here with me in my apartment and half the week with my ex-husband in Teaneck, New Jersey.
Okay, so basically everyone is functioning on a good level. And you know, no matter how many times we hear it and read it, and certainly I couldn't put Brazen down, because even though I had seen the TV series and everything else, you have to really be part of it and read it to understand it. But explain again, when you took all your courage and left the community, which is frightening. It's like being thrown in a country with a new language.
No, it's really...
Right? Explain.
You know, so have you ever seen, do you remember that movie? It's with Meg Ryan and Hugh Jackman. He's like, I can't remember what it's called. He travels in time. He's from the 1700s, and he falls through this wormhole in time, and he ends up in the 21st century, and he's in Manhattan, and he's a 17th century man. That's what it felt like. Mm. Walking out of my world, and that's how I speak about it. I speak about it as my world and this world, because it was time travel. I lived in the 1800s. I lived in a world where marriages were arranged, where women were under their father's rule until they went under their husband's rule, where they weren't allowed to live alone, where they weren't allowed to study the very books by which their entire lives were governed, where they were told that because they were women, they were the stupider sex, and that their purpose in life was to have children and be obedient to their husbands. So I really grew up in a time that is very similar to what, you see now on Downton Abbey or Bridgerton and any of these, minus the fancy dresses and the fabulous parties. So, for me, it wasn't like going into a new country. It was going to Mars. It was time travel. And that sense of disorientation was tremendous. No one knew me. I didn't know a single human being. I'd never been to a bar. I'd never been on a date. I'd never been to a nightclub. I'd never written in an invoice. I knew nothing about the outside world. I knew nothing about modern culture. I was truly a time traveler. And so that feeling of going from a very cohesive community to being so alone that not a single human being knows of your existence, it's an extremely jarring, shocking thing to do.
And you did it. But explain the shoe story, because there you were in your community. You love fashion. You always drew and did things like that. But as you said, it was for you. It was a private thing. No one in the outside world knew. So
exactly.
Tell the shoe story, because no matter how many times we hear it, it's still hard to believe.
So basically, when I came out, my dream had been to be a fashion designer for as long as I can remember dreaming, which basically for someone like me in the world I lived in was like, dreaming of not having to breathe on a Wednesday. I mean, it was a ludicrous dream, but it's something that I couldn't get out of my head. I mean, I drew and designed my entire life in the community without any education, without any background. So when I come out, I want to be a fashion designer. And so I meet this guy completely, by chance at a restaurant. And he owned a fashion company at the time. He was contemplating purchasing a fashion company. I tell him, I want to design clothing and shoes. And lo and behold, he gives me that as an option. And now all of a sudden I'm designing shoes for this brand. And then the deal falls through and there's no brand anymore. And so now I'm left with all these beautiful shoe designs and no company to design it for. And so that's how Julia Haart Shoes was born. And I had all of these beautiful designs, beautiful shoes, but I had no idea how to manufacture them, how a shoe was made. I knew that shoes are from Italy. That's all I knew. And so I literally flew myself down to Italy, sat in, in all of these companies and factories until I literally taught myself how to make shoes. And then I realized that wasn't enough. I wanted to make shoes that eradicated the concept of suffering for beauty. It wasn't sufficient to simply make beautiful shoes. The whole idea of women suffering for beauty, to me, is as archaic as the world I come from. And so then I determined that my shoes would not only look beautiful, but would feel beautiful. And so I created and got a patent pending this, what we called Cloud9 technology, which basically ergonomically redesigned the shoes so that the pressure points were evenly distributed across the entire foot, thereby alleviating the pain of the entire pressure of your body being on the ball of your foot. And so those shoes that we created and designed, which were made with the most luxurious materials, within a year were being sold in 17 countries. And within 2 years, with the co-branding of La Perla, we're being sold in over 127 points of sale.
But initially, Julia, wait 1 minute, I'm talking to Julia Haart. Initially, where did the money come from? You had never really earned, you had babysitting money. You had no money.
Yes. So I did work behind the scenes without anyone in my community knowing. I did sell life insurance. That was my freedom money. So while I was
Did you sell it to the community or outside the community?
Completely outside of the community. No one in the community knew I was selling life insurance. And of course, I didn't know anyone outside of the community. So it was literally cold calling and, word of mouth, because I couldn't use any of the contacts and people I knew because I didn't want them to know I was selling life insurance. Not a single person in my community had any idea that that's something I was doing.
So all this is going on, and you mentioned La Perla, which was an incredible brand. So how did you get involved in that? You've got your shoes, which again is a whole new language, raising money, dealing with people, knowing markets here and abroad.
That's right. I mean, I was really so naive and so easily taken advantage of. People spotted the talent that I had and my hard work ethic and thought, okay, we can ride on this woman's coattails. And so, you know, there were a lot of charlatans who took advantage of me in the beginning of my story. And even today, you know, as we see, I'm still learning and realizing that I'm too trusting and that, you know, I do the work and then someone else tries to swoop on in and take the credit. I mean, this is something I think women face very constantly, even in this world. And so La Perla happened because I wanted to get my shoes into Hong Kong. I thought the Asian market was a very, very powerful market. And it, you know, it really is one that is perfectly situated for luxury and for uniqueness. And so I met this guy in Hong Kong to try and convince him to help me get my shoes into stores in Asia. And he was, at the time, told me that he was sitting on the board of this lingerie brand called La Perla, and that La Perla was endeavoring to become a full fashion brand and had tried to be, you know, to sell shoes, but it wasn't successful. And so he thought that my shoes, because not only were they incredibly beautiful, but they were so comfortable, he thought that my shoes with lingerie would work very well. And so I designed a collection for La Perla. I showed it to the creative director at the time and the merchandising team and the owner. They loved it. And in April of 2015, 2 years after I walked out the door, I had a co-branding Julia Haart shoes with La Perla. And that transformed into, Julia, can you design handbags? Julia, can you design clothing? Julia, can you design lingerie? And so within 1 year, I became creative director of the entire brand.
Wow. And co-owner and former CEO of Elite, which is the World Group, and many other things. And at that point, you ended up marrying the guy who was the head of La Perla.
Correct. And now divorcing the guy who was the head of La Perla.
I mean, your life has, it's spinning. It's so fast.
It's constantly changing. And look, I'm still in the same place that I was back then, but in a very different sense, meaning back then I had to fight for freedom alone. I had to fight for recognition alone. Today, what I've accomplished at EWG has been shown all over the world. There have been newspaper articles, television interviews. The entire My Unorthodox Life is about the change that I've brought to the industry. So, you know, to be in the position where a man again is trying to denigrate me, take away everything that I've worked for, is not new to me. But I think the difference here is that now I have people. I'm not a zero anymore. You know, I have a voice, and that voice will never be silenced. And, you know, I will fight until the day that I'm vindicated, like I have done since I've walked out that door.
So
you know, it's not the first time I've been taken advantage of, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last time. And I think many women have been in my situation. Many women have been through divorces where, you know, the spouse is seen to be more powerful, or, you know, although in this case, of course, Sylvia is no longer a billionaire by any stretch of the imagination, but that is the perception. And I think in this country, we worship that. So I think women, we all have to, you know, band together, support each other, and realize that we still have a long way to go for women to be taken as seriously as men, and for men to, you know, not steal our the work of our own hands. So
I'm talking to Julia Haart.
Part of my freedom journey.
Okay, well, and it's a long journey. So work-wise, what are you doing these days?
So, you know, I have my shapewear brand that is coming to stores near you in the holiday season of this year. It's the first of its kind. It's the only non-shapewear looking shapewear. It's really an extraordinary product. We altered the way that color is put into material. So for the first time, shapewear isn't beige, white, or black. It's colorful. It's sexy. It's got designs on it and patterns. You'd never know it was shapewear. And we were able to do that because the problem with shapewear is that when you stretch it, you get those nasty white lines. And that's why it's always beige, white, and black. We literally fuse the color into the material, so it becomes like Elastigirl. No matter how hard you stretch it, you never see those lines. And so we've created a shapewear that you could wear in, you could wear out, you could wear it under a jacket, you could wear it as a dress. So that will be coming to a whole bunch of stores, I think, in Nordstrom and Bloomingdale's and Dillard's and a whole bunch of stores in December of this year.
Great.
So that's really exciting. And, of course, I am embroiled in several lawsuits because, I was illegally fired from the company that I have brought into $1 billion valuation in 3 years. So, of course, I have not in any way, shape, or form given that up. I'm very proud of what we at EWG accomplished in the last 3 years through the most difficult time period of COVID. And we have grown and created incredible opportunities for our talent. And so I'm still fighting that battle as well as everything else.
So you've got a lot on your plate. And during all this, because the transition initially was so fast and took on a life of its own, how is your head? I mean, how do you deal with this? People with little tiny changes are falling apart. COVID made people depressed and having all kinds of mental issues. So how did you hold Julia Haart together?
With my family and my friends. That's really the truth. This time, I'm not fighting for my freedom alone. And it's really been a tremendous source of, strength and inspiration, not to mention all the people from the company who call me every day and
who are there for you.
Who are there for me. So there's just so many people helping me and supporting me against their own self-interest. Let's be honest, it's pretty dangerous to be my friend sometimes. So those people have kept me going. And, again, I just tell myself, look, think about the suffragettes. They weren't just belittled or accused of wrongdoing or their names dragged through the mud. Those women who demanded freedom and equality and asked for the right to vote, they were imprisoned. They were put into jail. People who ask for change and are always lightning rods of controversy. It's a lonely road I have chosen. I know that very well. So I've got to just stay strong, remind myself of my purpose, and
keep on going.
And just keep going. It's one foot in front of the other. Is it easy? No. Is it painful? Of course it is. But it's part of my journey. And if I can't be strong enough to keep fighting, then how can I expect others to do so? So I just have to keep going, one foot in front of the other.
I wish you all the best, Julia Haart. The book, Brazen, available wherever books are sold. And we'll catch up with you in a couple of months and find out what the latest adventure is. Take care of yourself.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for having me on.
Take care of yourself.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I'm Joan Hamburg. You're listening to WAVC.
Greg Kelly here with an urgent retirement warning. President Trump's return is set to usher in a new golden age, but growing trade tensions and China's ruthless attack on the dollar have rattled the markets. That's why Warren Buffett just dumped $133 billion in stocks. And so too have Jeff Bezos, Larry Page, and even Jamie Dimon, CEO of the world's largest bank. That's why thousands of informed IRA and 401k savers are now shielding their savings with gold. And the experts at Colonial Colonial Metals Group are the only folks I trust to help you to do the exact same thing, especially now after Rich Dad Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki warned of a coming market crash. So visit freegoldguide.com/Kelly or call 800-655-5186. You'll get a free gold guide on how to bulletproof your wealth with gold tax-free. Plus, see if you qualify for a free home safe and as much as $7,500 in free silver. Once again, that's freegoldguide.com/Kelly.